The Hindutva ideology is a demented, delusional, psychotic manifesto for ethnic cleansing. Prime Minister Modi has been a hate-mongering demagogue his entire career, and he has at least 20 years of Muslim blood on his hands. We have heard outrageous anti-Muslim fanaticism expressed at the highest levels of the Indian government. They've created a climate in India of intimidation and terror for Muslims in India that resembles the American South after Reconstruction, when lynchings and brutality were cultural norms. And obviously their philosophy, this Hindutva philosophy, is not unlike the tone of the savage Buddhist monks in Myanmar who dehumanized the Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine province and have been leading an ongoing genocide in that country. And obviously it's very close and akin to Nazism and Zionism and the ideology of people like Slobodan Milosevic. What I would like to say about Hindutva is that any anti-Muslim ideology, any ideology that includes any element of anti-Muslim hatred, a genocidal ambition to purge Muslims out of existence, this is a suicidal ideology. This is like thinking that you can melt a glacier with a cigarette lighter. In our lifetime, India is going to have the largest Muslim population in the world. India is part of BRICS, and BRICS just doubled in size last week, adding 5 Muslim countries. And as it grows, BRICS is very likely to become a de facto Muslim political and economic bloc. There is no future in which enmity towards the Muslims makes any logical or practical sense for any nation. India is the only BRICS country that has a negative trade balance. They have a trade deficit that runs on average, I think, around $20 billion every month. Without remittances from Indians overseas, the Indian economy would cave in. The rupee would plummet into oblivion. Inflation would skyrocket. Unemployment would spread like wildfire, and investment inside of India would come to a grinding halt. And the bulk of those overseas remittances are coming from where? They're coming from Indians working in the GCC countries, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and so on. The Indian economy is held together by the hospitality of Muslim countries who let Indians work there and who let them send their money back home. Those money transfers don't have to be allowed to happen. There are regulatory measures that the Gulf states could take to restrict the transfer of capital out of their countries. They could do that. Half of the top 6 countries that India imports goods from are Muslim countries. Modi needs to remember that his country is completely dependent, not partially dependent, completely dependent on friendly relations with the Muslim world. Good relations with the Muslims, good ties with the Muslim world is a recipe for success and prosperity. You can't hate the Muslims and love yourself at the same time, because it's self-destructive. The Ummah is a glacier, and you can only chart your course around it, not through it. If you reconcile yourself with the Muslims now, you'll be ahead of the curve. As I've talked about many times, the global economy is shifting to the global south, and the single largest cohesive population in the global south is the Muslims. The nations in the global south that possess the most important raw materials, from oil to gas to gold to rare earths, and have the most robust demographics are the Muslim nations. There's no getting around the fact that the second half of the 21st century is going to be characterized by Muslim ascendancy. It's pointless to fight it. It's self-destructive to fight it. India already is, and is going to become even more integrated into global Muslim economies. Hostility towards the Muslims doesn't make any sense. And if Modi doesn't change, then India is going to have to change Modi, because there's no future in this fanaticism. India is never going to be a Hindu-only country, and India's economy is never going to be able to survive without being underwritten by the Muslims. Even your most famous tourist attraction is the Taj Mahal, a Muslim achievement. It's self-humiliation to hate Muslims, for anyone, but especially for Indians. And if you think that there's nothing that Muslims worldwide could do to pressure you, to pressure India, then you're delusional. Like I said, money transfers could be halted. Exports could be halted. 2 billion Muslims around the world could lobby trade organizations, trade commissions, chambers of commerce, lobby them to denounce the BJP. Indian shops and businesses in every Muslim country could be boycotted, and boycotted by Muslims and people who care about justice, even in the West, all around the world. The entire Indian diaspora could be lobbied to denounce Hindutva and the BJP. The UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia can pump money from their sovereign wealth funds into the political opposition in India, while overnight the entire infrastructure that keeps the BJP afloat could be disabled. We have the ability to impose catastrophic organ failure on the entire political establishment of India. And the reason why we're not doing that isn't because we can't. It isn't because we don't know how. And it isn't because we don't have the will to do it. It's because we are a peaceful and compassionate and kind-hearted people, and we don't like having to play hardball. We don't like being combative and confrontational. And we want you to do the right thing because it is the right thing, not because we forced you to do it. We want to get along. Muslims have a natural reflex towards de-escalation, towards mediation, arbitration, negotiation. We approach conflict calmly with the intent to calm it down. We don't like to act forcefully if it can be avoided. But when it can't be avoided, we have the ability to do the needful. And India, maybe more than any other country in the world, would be helpless against worldwide collective Muslim action. No, India has no bargaining position. We know it and they know it. Without us, India would either become a Western colony again or a Chinese colony. That's a fact. Now, movements like Hindutva and parties like the BJP are doomed. It's just a question of how much damage they're going to be able to do to their country before they inevitably fall apart.